Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video requested. It's called Space Marine Creation Recruitment, Your Guide on Becoming an Astartes Warhammer 40,000 Lore by Luetin09. I've been requested to watch a lot of videos by this YouTuber called Luetin09. They say he has some of the best, or he is the best Warhammer 40K lore master, if I can say that. I don't know, sorry if it sounds a bit cringy. I'm sorry, but yeah, I've been told that this YouTube creator creates a lot of good and quality and information driven Warhammer 40K content. So here I am with the Space Marine Creation Recruitment, and yes, this is something I've been wanting to know about. You know, how do these Space Marines come to be, and this gene seed, what is it exactly? Is it a metallic entity or is it organic? Well, you know, so hopefully Luetin can answer these questions for me. All right, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mould them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them. They shall be of iron will and steely sinew. In great armour I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons they shall be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease, no sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies and machines that no foe will best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear. Space Marines are humanity's most elite fighting force. They're the defenders of civilization, but their immense power is forged through a harsh selection process, extreme genetic and body modifications. This grueling transformation kills many recruits, and those who do survive it are left arguably barely human. The conversion from weak mortal to demi-godlike superhuman is one gifted to only a tiny amount of humans in the 41st millennium. An Astartes, when his transformation is complete, will be stronger, tougher, mentally more powerful by factors than an ordinary human. And while a Space Marine's prime mission is to protect humanity, their physical disparity from ordinary common humans can actually leave many Astartes to look down on these lesser common humans, while others will feel a renewed sense of dedication to protect those who can barely protect themselves. It's important to remember that Space Marines are the defenders of humanity and not the rulers of it. Humans, for better or worse, have been the leaders of the Imperium of Man until recently with the return of Primarch Roboute Guilliman. While the transformation of a human to Space Marine is complex, you'll often hear the terminology of a gene seed be used. Now, a gene seed is not literally a seed, but it is a specific organ that each Astartes carries with seed-like qualities. It's a term used to describe generally the genetic material of an Astartes. It's more accurately the cells and DNA required to engineer a human into an Astartes. The gene seed, more specifically though, refers to the Space Marine's progenoid glands, and the clue is in the name there when you think of progeny. These organs in a Space Marine respond to the other genetic implants they have and replicate DNA. Essentially, they are, in a manner of speaking, an asexual form of reproduction, which is why when a Space Marine is fatally wounded on a battlefield, an apothecary will fight to recover his gene seed.
Okay, so this gene seed, this organ or gland, is like a piece of the chain. You know, like they have different other chains in their bodies, and then this last piece activates the entire chain, and thus it transforms these humans into these superhumans. Okay, I hope I'm getting it correct there. I'm not sure. I'll have to watch this again maybe.
Also why yes, Space Marines do not require heterosexual reproduction. 5 years from implantation, a Space Marine's neck progeny glands can be harvested, but the chest glands won't be harvested up until 10 years. Space Marines essentially depend on themselves to produce new Marines for the chapter. Lastly, in this general sphere of discussion, to answer a very commonly discussed topic, are Space Marines actually castrated? And then, how do they excrete waste? Well, I can't actually recall anywhere in written law this being noted, so if anybody has a specific point of reference, please do link it. But my speculation, based on a few things that I've kind of looked at, is that pretty much the canon opinion is that Space Marines have no sexual drive. However, when it comes to excretion, it's true that their armour is also an environment suit that would cycle and process their own waste, much like a still suit in the Dune universe. Also, Space Marines do not live in their armour, although they may wear it for extended periods of time. It can be removed. It's entirely possible that their external genitals are removed and they have implants to take care of waste, but I've got nothing to see that it points towards this. So it's an unknown, but it's not something that's critically really important in the scheme of things. It's equally possible that it's just seen as an organ as with everything else and they just leave it all be. Now, before we look further into how a Space Marine is forged in the 41st millennium, let's remind ourselves how they were created over history. Now, the first form of Space Marine was originally created by the Emperor during the unification wars of the late 30th millennium. Earth at this time was a barren wasteland of scavengers and barbaric warring tribes after civilization had imploded as a result of the Age of Strife. Earth, being cut off from its supply routes in the warp, cannibalized itself and fell into total anarchy. After the Emperor originally created techno-barbarians, a crude adapted form of super soldier, he would form them later into the Thunder Warriors. These warriors were brutal, powerful, and most importantly, highly unstable. The Emperor knew that he wouldn't be able to work with these soldiers forged in the fires of anarchy beyond the unification of Earth's warring tribes, and so he secretly constructed his genetic facilities in a fortress deep below vast mountain ranges on Earth.
Yes, I've heard about the Thunder Warriors. I assumed that they were the second creation of the God Emperor, and the Custodes were his first creations. So I'm not entirely sure where do the Astartes connect in with this. Are the Astartes like his third creations and then the Primarchs are his fourth? Yeah, but hopefully Luetin can answer that.
Here, he would, with some few remaining gene rights, create his Primarchs using his own genetic material as a template. Then subsequently, the very first of the new breed of warriors, the Space Marines, or Astartes. But what are the Thunder Warriors? Imperial records state that the Thunder Warriors were nearly all wiped out during a particularly bloody battle at the end of the Unification Wars on Mount Ararat. Conveniently, the new Legiones Astartes were created readily to replace them. Now, records from this time are understandably fragmented, but described eyewitness accounts from the few Thunder Warriors to survive this battle, like Arcturnus, stated that it was in fact the Emperor himself who massacred the Thunder Warriors. Others have stated that it was also in collaboration with his custodian guard. In several instances that occurred since this time where Thunder Warriors have appeared and faced their Astartes brothers, the Thunder Warriors have nearly always managed to inflict casualties beyond expectation before they are finally felled. This gives some indication of how powerful they were as warriors and why the Emperor felt they were perhaps too dangerous given their power and psychological instability to function as a disciplined fighting and defensive force for the new Imperium. Regardless, this whole situation is a dark and little spoken of episode for the Emperor of Man. Vocalizing these events would no doubt have some Inquisition or ecclesiarchy on their way to you very promptly. With the Thunder Warriors killed in the Battle of Mount Ararat, the new Space Marines, the Legiones Astartes, would come to the fore. Unlike their Thunder Warrior forebears, they would undergo rigorous mental training as well as physical and genetic modifications. This would give them immense physical traits, as well as being near unbreakable with their mental conditioning. The new Marines were initially segregated into 20 legions. This separation was not for simple organizational purposes. Each legion was imbued with genetic traits from their Primarch, and as such this impacted their character and behavior. To ensure unity, the Emperor designated them to stay together in their legions to reduce friction and ensure cohesion of the Astartes brothers. Through recruiting and conquest of human colonies, as the Imperium expanded, so did the Astartes legions. What had begun as a handful of Marines swelled to tens of thousands during the Crusades. This would lead later to heavy damage caused during the heresy, after the Primarchs holding such immense power, being the sole commanders of each Space Marine legion. After that period of chaotic incursion, Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, would draft the Codex Astartes, and the remaining loyalist Primarchs would, after much consideration, agree at best that the Space Marine legions be split into chapters. This was to ensure no Space Marine legion could wield the sheer weight of power they had during the Crusades and subsequent heresy. This was known as the Second Founding. Each of these chapters would take a permanent homeworld or fortress monastery in the Imperium. The Codex Astartes states that each chapter would be 1,000 battle brothers in number and manage its own recruitment. A specific development in the creation of a Space Marine was discovered after the Horus Heresy: weaknesses in the gene seed. Now, as I previously explained, the gene seed is the core biological component in the creation of a Space Marine. During the Heresy, Space Marines were created on a massive scale, and as with any biological replication process, if you do this on a large scale, then mutations and errors can occur in this DNA replication. So another result of the implementation of the Codex Astartes by Guilliman was to slow the process of creating a Space Marine, to more closely monitor their genetic material and the material implanted within new recruits to ensure purity and expunge defects.
So during the unification of, or the conquest of the galaxy, and also during the Civil War, they were producing like thousands of Space Marines, and thus from quality they went for quantity, and that quantity became degraded, became contaminated, and it resulted in Space Marines that had probably mental or psyche defects and even physical defects, and that also attributed to the acceleration of this rebellion, probably because there are so many of them and they can't be kept with a watchful eye. And what was his name? Horus, had his thousands upon thousands of Astartes legionnaires who could follow him, because probably they all thought the same way like their Primarch, because they all share that same gene. So yeah, that the issue here where the Emperor created these armies primarily to destroy his enemies and have this peace was completely shattered because of the exertion of producing so many Astartes and not being able to control the individual legions. Resulted in this catastrophe, I would say. Okay.
Guilliman would also establish core genetic banks on Terra to ensure a stock of genetics existed. These pure sources would provide new material for the foundings of Astartes chapters and also prevent any further contamination. As previously described, each chapter is responsible for its own replenishment. It chooses where and how to locate potential Space Marine candidates. Many will recruit solely from their own homeworld, but others will reach out to hive worlds of the Imperium to locate powerful and resilient fighters who have shown promise and an unnatural ability in combat, even potentially recruiting from gang fighters in...
What's a hive world? Is it like a bee colony? I'm not entirely sure what a hive world is, but okay.
Hive cities. Feral planets can also be good for selection, as the humans here are physically tough and have to deal with daily hardships more frequently than some other Imperial planets. Surprisingly, less recruits actually appear from the militaristic worlds like fortress planets, maybe because although knowing lives of military discipline, they haven't endured the true horror and hardships that come from the rougher ends of Imperial life. Any candidate for a Space Marine will be usually young, between the ages of 10 and 15 years old. Obviously they need to be strong, healthy and fiercely loyal to the Imperium.
I don't understand that notion of picking people who come from very dangerous and, disadvantaged communities instead of picking people who already come from a military doctrine, a military tradition. It will be even much more easier to convert this person into a Astartes soldier who will be loyal, who will be disciplined, who will be knowing everything that needs to be known about military doctrine, and comparing that to someone who comes from a planet that's completely poverty stricken, and where they're always fighting in gangs and stuff like that. It just, because I'm assuming they would not have the proper discipline to follow orders and they'll be expected to follow their superiors. I don't know. I'm just thinking that, if they pick more soldiers from such worlds where there's a military culture, there's a military tradition, and they've been indoctrinated in that system of military ethics and code, maybe it'll be much more easier. But okay.
Often on worlds where recruitment occurs, young male humans who show exceptional skill or strength are pushed hard to give them the best chance of potential recruitment. Candidates can occasionally be as old as 20, but the full effect of their biological conversions may not be as effective or complete. Standard trials for Space Marine recruitment often involve combat, endurance, perhaps hunting of some extremely dangerous indigenous animal, and for the few who survive the tasks set by the Astartes who are there to supervise, the rewards are beyond estimation. It's difficult to describe just how revered Space Marines are to ordinary citizens of the Imperium. While they wouldn't be directly worshipped, they are certainly individuals with godlike reverence and awe. Many humans in the Imperium will go their entire lives without ever even seeing an Astartes, and they may only arrive on an Imperial planet once in a generation. On some worlds they are even somewhat mythical. So for a family on an Imperial world to have their son chosen for Space Marine recruitment and candidacy would be an honour beyond imagination. But from...
I remember when I was watching the Space Marine 2 cinematic, and the Astartes were, killing the Tyranids, and then they moved to a balcony area, and then I saw a Imperial soldier kneeling on the floor and, saying he's angels. Yeah, I kind of understand where Luetin is also coming from when he says that, the Space Marines are revered. They may not be worshipped, as gods, but they are respected and honored, and, you could say they're like superstars. Yeah.
Some perspectives bittersweet, in as all likelihood they may never see them again once they have been accepted, and in very high possibility will probably die in later processes. But it's nonetheless the highest honour to serve the Emperor and the Imperium in this way, and would no doubt lead to adulation, even possible special treatment for families after the fact. Ordinary citizens understand that to be accepted for the conversion to the Astartes, the Emperor's chosen warriors, is nothing short of becoming a demigod. Then again, you could just as easily have been recruited from a hive world full of daily extreme violence, and your gang was just forcibly made to participate in the trials, and you were simply the only one left alive at the end. So that's your flip side of the coin. Pray you never seek acceptance to the Grey Knights. I'll cover that later. Despite all the physical and mental requirements for candidacy, another element is spiritual purity. In the 41st millennium, Imperial society is heavily religious, worshipping the God Emperor, and most importantly decrying the ruinous powers of chaos. Chaplains and the ecclesiarchy will continually monitor society around Astartes' recruitment sources to ensure that there are no signs of taint by the dark forces of chaos. With the easy part over, the selected candidates, now known as aspirants, will begin the ritual process of becoming a Space Marine. This may be a formal process of reciting scripture, or it could involve further trials. These could take place on the homeworld or result in immediate departure for the aspirant. Each chapter has their own private and guarded initiations. Some of these can be heavily traumatic and are usually significantly harder tests designed to break those who show even the smallest cracks of weakness. These trials for the young aspirants may even include ritual slaughter, scarification, even amputation and bloodletting. It's all designed to prove their commitment, loyalty and unwavering faith in the Astartes chapter. Unsurprisingly, some aspirants do not pass this phase of testing physically or mentally. Aspirants will continue periods of testing and examination as well as actual live combat during their period as a recruit for the Space Marine chapter. And some of these trials may be cleverly disguised as coming of age rituals, other celebrations some more combat based. All, though, will be observed carefully by senior members of the chapter and chaplains who will be assessing key traits and behaviours, looking for candidates who fulfil their exacting requirements. Some of these aspirants from Feral worlds or even other worlds may not be truly aware of what Space Marines are, and this innocence may in some way protect them from making overthought errors that cost them later.
Okay, Hive world and Feral worlds. Alright, I'm gonna have to look these worlds up. Hive worlds and Feral. Okay. Interesting. Let's continue.
Still, some chapters actually take little interest in these early stages and will only actually become involved later once aspirants have been further thinned down. The whole process is a physical and psychological minefield. Some challenges could be unachievable, while others the simple act of survival is enough to merit approval to progress to the next stage. All the tests put to Space Marine aspirants are designed to test every element of their being to the limit and expose any weaknesses that are present, as well as learn about how they handle and make judgments on situations they are presented with. While the recruitment age for these aspirants is undoubtedly young, it's worth remembering that the nightmare environment of the 41st millennium is undoubtedly very harsh, and so growing up and becoming an adult quickly is something which many learn to do, and so their age shouldn't necessarily dictate your judgment of them based on our current period in time. Standard Astartes trials for these young recruits can include knowledge of self. Astartes look at recruits' mental strength equally to the physical. The horrors they will face in their lives as a Space Marine, despite later conditioning, require the strongest character in a recruit to be successful and worthy. They may use a chapter librarian to impose psychic horrors on a recruit to see if they survive the nightmares they're forced to witness. He may be forced to take drugs and face the worst parts of his own psyche. The stress and trauma of this trial can often physically affect their bodies as well, so in many ways this becomes the ultimate test for recruits. Completion of this trial will undoubtedly fundamentally alter the young recruit forever. Some chapters, like the Imperial Fists, consider this kind of mental testing especially important, but do so by exposing their recruits to literal physical pain, and we use devices like the subtly titled Pain Glove.
Yes, I watched the Imperial Fists on the Temple Institute, and yes, they use some sort of device called the pain glove that, constricts their hand, in a continuous amount of pain, and it, for some reason, that kind of pain improves their mental stability and mental fortitude. It's just insane, but it has worked for them all this time, so I guess it has some merits to it. And to be an Astartes, you have to be mentally strong, you have to be physically strong. You can't be one and not the other. If you're not the other one, then you're kicked out probably. I don't know what happens if you fail. Do they kill you? Or do they just let you go? Like if you failed a specific type of test where it doesn't involve you shooting other people, or like having a mental test. I'm just wondering, do they kill you if you fail? Yeah.
These hook into the nervous system of the recruit and inflict horrific pain, but also maintain their consciousness well past what a normal individual could handle. The result will either be a mentally toughened but probably scarred individual, or a complete mental breakdown and death. An obvious and standard test for many recruits is exposure. Most worlds of the Imperium have unforgiving environments, and so sending out recruits into these wastes with little to survive with is an easy way to tell who is strong enough as a candidate. Space Marine apothecaries can rebuild damaged individuals, so the test is less of can you survive without consequences, and more simply, can you survive? Many worlds are severely irradiated, frozen wastes, toxic wastelands, or ashen wastes, where planets have suffered total ecological collapse. Alternately, a planet could also be a literal jungle full of horrific creatures, small and large, ready to tear you to pieces or just melt your face off. As stated, the test is simple: survive for a set period of time. It will also likely involve some object of crossing a distance from A to B, so as to avoid recruits just digging a hole somewhere and sitting in it until time has elapsed. Some of the tests could well be impossible to complete and are simply assessing who can survive longest or travel furthest before dying or near death.
There's no escape. There is no escape. There's no running away. There's no hiding. You have to face these challenges and you have to survive or win. If you don't, death is your best friend.
Ultramarines and Space Wolf chapters are known to favour exposure testing. A fairly self-explanatory trial, recruits are pitted against one another in one-on-one combat. When the last few remain, the assessing Astartes will usually halt the assessment. The type of duel could vary between armed or unarmed combat, consecutive combat, or recruits switching out on completing rounds. There is one constant though, and that is it's always a fight to the death. Again, apothecaries are able to heal most ordinary human wounds with ease, so these fights are often fairly no-holds-barred brutal affairs. Amputation and heavy trauma being the norm. Unsurprisingly, duels are the Blood Angels trial of choice, but others such as Dark Angels, Imperial Fists and Space Wolves also put this trial to their recruits. War is life in the Imperium, and although some worlds know this more than others, planets used for recruitment usually have some form of regular combat going on. This trial is less a trial and more a means of assessing potential candidates. Astartes may have observed headhunting particularly strong champions, or they may watch them from orbit, observing infighting between tribes on Imperial feral worlds.
Okay, so the case for recruiting young children or young people from planets that have, poverty and gangs and, continuous fighting, I guess this is one of the reasons why they would recruit them, because they're coming from this environment of fighting and death and always being pitted against each other, and they would actually excel in something like this, where they would be fighting amongst their own recruit members, or the survival of the fittest kind of programs, and probably those who have been living in a military system, they might not adapt to this kind of situation. I don't know, but I kind of see the points of recruiting people from planets that have got these continuous gang wars. Okay.
In this trial, recruits are tasked to head out into their homeworld and slay a beast for causing chaos or harm to their world. Many Imperial worlds host highly dangerous life forms, or worse, orc infestations. The recruit must go out alone, or sometimes in small groups, and return with their captured hunt often alive. With these group hunts though, the nasty twist is that there can only be one successful recruit, so they could turn on each other, break off alone to achieve or steal victory. I personally question the validity of this test. Fighting to the death to show strength over others seems plausible, but setting out in as a group but then betraying other recruits seems to go kind of against the traits Astartes look for in recruits. Anyway, I'm returning.
Because now, how will you trust this person after all of this recruitment process and they finally become a Space Marine? How can you trust this person with your other Astartes members, because now they've learned that the only way to survive in this organization is if I kill my comrades at arms and my superior, just to make sure that I survive. They're going to have this kind of mentality instilled in them, you know. So yeah, I'm also with Luetin here, that, you know, teamwork is important. Teamwork to capture this beast or this animal that's rampaging on your homeworld and bring it back alive, you know, as a team, as a group. I think that's more important than you having to kill them later on, or even before you capture the beast. So yeah.
Home, they'll be required to slay their successful hunt in a ritual in front of their community before being led successfully away in the throes of glory. Lastly, the quite vague challenge trial. And this is exactly what it is, some form of probably unsurmountable challenge. This could be to attempt to fight a full-blown space marine in combat. An impossible task, you might imagine, but usually remember, this is the 41st millennium and bizarre occurrences are abound. While the thought of a child fighting a space marine seems insane, remember, the task is usually to see how they approach it, not necessarily their success. In some extremely rare situations though, the aspirant may actually beat the space marine challenger. As completely impossible as this may seem, that individual usually will hold some unusual or rare power and will go on to become...
Okay, I'm sorry. No. No. The aspirant would defeat the space marine. I'll understand if the space marine doesn't have the armor on him anymore and he's just, you know, naked, you know, just having his clothes, and that's it. Probably the aspirant will have a chance. But if the Astartes member has his power armor on him and the aspirant has nothing but his bare hands, I'm sorry. Okay? No.
A legendary hero of the chapter. The aspirant will also usually be armed while the space marine unarmed and without his power armor. Still, as with most of the former trials, the test here is really about if they can just survive at all, not so much best their opponent. Other arguably more horrific tests though could be non-combat based and test a recruit's strength, speed, mental skill or resistance to toxins. So they might, for example, be forced to drink nightmarish toxic chemicals, lift weights so heavy they break their bones apart, or evade some kind of horrific dangerous trap. Recruits deemed to have succeeded by whatever standards, however unlikely, will then be restored by chapter apothecaries. Ultramarines and again Imperial Fists favour these trials. Clearly a great many recruits will not survive this stage of assessment, but even those who fail to be accepted but by some miracle survive will usually be heavily respected for having done so, not just by their families and friends, but by the assessing Astartes. Having done no wrong but maybe just not made the cut, these surviving but unsuccessful aspirants who were assessed on their home world may return to their former communities, a rare occurrence. Or they may continue on to serve the chapter as a serf, a menial but loyal servant who takes personal care of, say, a marine's armour and weaponry.
Okay, so those who have survived this program and maybe not have been chosen, they don't get killed, you know, they survive and they are able to go home if they're not successful or become a servant to the Astartes. Okay, all right, that's good. That's, you know, that's good.
Those returned to their homes are extremely few, but surprisingly are not perceived as failures. It would be made clear to all that having just survived, they have shown sheer strength and integrity as an Imperial citizen. They would then likely go on to become a strong leader for that world as Imperial Guard, Planetary Defense Force, or some other leadership. Successful aspirants will now become neophytes. They will move on to the next stage, where they'll begin the early stages of conversion to a full space marine with the initial implantation of the gene seed and chemical adaptation of their genetically enhanced organs. This could mean immediate departure with a Space Marine brother to the next phase, or it may be that they are allowed to celebrate in their home community before departure. A very huge moral boost for the Imperial community there, and also to help reinforce Imperial values and loyalty. To be able to say your community gained a successful Astartes recruit is no small thing, and statues, paintings, songs and stories will be told for many years, if not generations to come. Neophytes will be expected to engage in training for combat as well as other mental training, as well as following chapter lore. If a neophyte should break chapter lore through ignorance or unthinkably by deliberately doing so, they will expect severe punishments. A neophyte breaking chapter lore will not simply be thrown out, they would likely be mind scrubbed, live out their lives as either, best case scenario, chapter serfs, being menial servants, or worse, forcible amputation and body conversion to life as cybernetic drones and slaves as servitors. Successful neophytes immediately will begin conditioning to be implanted with their gene seeds and relevant genetic enhancements. Space Marines must be male because the gene seed is only compatible with male hormones and genetics, so no, you won't see female Space Marines. The neophytes also need to be tested for compatibility. I'm always kind of surprised that this doesn't happen before the recruitment trials, but anyway, so they're tested for compatibility, otherwise as with organ transplants. Rejection would be fatal for the neophyte. Even with this testing, it can still happen later down the line. They will then further have their mental strength checked before implantation of the gene seed begins, to ensure that they are in no way compromised by the forces of chaos. If all these criteria are approved, the neophyte recruit will now become a Space Marine Scout, or in some cases a full Space Marine Initiate. They will live isolated in the Space Marine Chapter's Fortress Monastery on the homeworld, save for any approved missions. The individual will be tutored on battle methods, tactics, psycho-conditioning, values, and the history of his chapter. The reason these early Marines are titled Initiates is because it is still unknown as to whether they will even survive to the final end process of becoming a full battle brother. 19.
How old will you be? How old will you be when you're still doing all of these things? Oh man. Wow.
Organs grown from the chapter gene seed will be implanted to the neophyte initiate. Some are transplants and others are grown in the trainee Marine's body. The gene seed will also adapt and change and grow the individual's body to become the giant size of a Space Marine, towering over ordinary mortal humans. Much of the body chemistry will be fundamentally reworked during this time, and the gene seed contains genetically engineered viral machines which rebuild the body to the template created by the Emperor. Any implant has a potential to fail, and this rejection will automatically end and probably kill the initiate. As if the odds weren't stacked against them already, this further thins down the number who survive to the end of this arduous process. In brief, the 19 implanted or grown organs to become a full Space Marine are as follows. First, a secondary heart to increase blood supply and capacity. It can also pump steroids and extra adrenaline for battle situations. The os modular or iron heart. This strengthens and grows the skeleton of a Space Marine so that his bones will contain a ceramic based mineral which is added to an initiate's diet. After a few years, the Space Marine skeleton will be exponentially stronger than a normal human. The ribcage will have become fused to a solid bone plate, providing extra protection for internal organs. The biscopia is implanted within the chest cavity, and this increases skeletal muscular development, essentially muscle density. The hemastomen assists in carrying oxygen and nutrients more efficiently throughout the blood. It also assists in regulating the second and third implants. The Larraman's organ is also placed in the chest and manufactures synthetic Larraman cells. These serve like ordinary human blood platelets, but faster and more efficient. When a Space Marine is wounded, they form fully healed scar tissue in seconds, preventing hemorrhaging. This ability can make Space Marines appear invincible as they take wound after wound. Anything other than the most catastrophic of injuries is going to leave them still standing. The catalepsion node is implanted in the back of the cerebrum. It allows Space Marines to avoid the need for sleep, entering them into a form of ongoing coma, allowing their brain the ability to systematically recharge by individual parts at a time. This enables them to stay on duty for hundreds of hours. The seventh implant is the preomnor. It functions as a decontamination chamber above the stomach and will analyze ingested materials, neutralizing any organic or inorganic toxins. It also enables Astartes to eat materials for sustenance that would kill ordinary humans. The omophagia is implanted in the upper spinal cord. It absorbs information through ingested DNA and RNA related to memories. The purpose is to gain tactical or survival information by eating animals or life forms indigenous on a planet. In addition to a second heart, Space Marines also have multi-lungs as their ninth implant. 3 in fact. This is to give them extra oxygen absorption in thin air environments. In a toxic environment, their ordinary lungs are shut off to allow the third lung to act as a filter for any necessary toxins. The 10th adaptation is the ocular lobe. It's a gene seed adaptation that enhances eyesight along the optic nerves. This gives increased accuracy of vision and increased low light sight ability. Lyman's ear is not simply better for more accurate hearing, it enables Marines to resist ordinary human dizziness and for them to be able to filter out white noise and sonic attacks. The Sasan membrane allows a Space Marine to enter a state of suspended animation. This can enable mortally wounded Marines to survive until help or an apothecary's arrival. This hibernation period has been known to be able to last for anything as long as half a century. Melanochrome alters the pigments in the skin cells, allowing Astartes to shield himself from dangerous radiation and heat. Different levels of this in effect can cause physical differences between chapters, such as the very pale skin of the Blood Angels or the darker skin of the Salamanders. The oolitic kidney filters blood to further remove toxins that have been ingested in combination with the 7th organ. It is best not to think of this though like an ordinary kidney, as this organ functions to assist in removing toxins before they have passed through any normal process of absorption. Otherwise, it wouldn't be very useful. It also helps to regulate the advanced circulatory system and other organs. The neuroglottis in the mouth allows a Marine to biochemically analyse things by taste or smell, or determine if something is poisonous or safe. Despite their advanced organs, this could still be very useful for a variety of purposes, and it can also enable them to track targets, much like a canine. The muconoid is implanted in the nervous system and, if activated through an external treatment, will cause the Astartes skin to secrete a waxy substance. This will cocoon them to protect them in situations of extended suspended animation, even the vacuum of space or other temperature extremes. The Betcher's gland consists of 2 glands implanted in the mouth. These allow the Astartes to use their saliva as a corrosive acid when consciously activated. This could enable them to corrode bars if they were held captive or remove doors from their hinges. It also can assist them in eating difficult to break down substances. Some Marine chapters have found that this organ no longer functions or has become less effective over time. The progenoid glands, or the gene seeds, are the critical organs of a Space Marine. They're implanted into the neck and chest cavity and serve as reproductive glands to allow their DNA to be collected upon death and safeguard the continuity of the chapter. Apothecaries of a Space Marine chapter will cultivate germ cells from the progenoid glands to create the 19 organs of a Space Marine, or some of them, because some are grown within the Space Marine themselves. The final organ is the black carapace, otherwise called the interface. This material is implanted under the skin of the chest with the now shell-like ribcage. Fibred bundles then grow inward and interlink with the Space Marine's nervous system. Points for these bundles are pre-cut by apothecaries and form neural connection points. The function of these are to allow a Space Marine to interface with the heavy power armor, or as some would have you believe, the armor's machine spirit. These connections enables faster reaction and maneuverability. Without this, Space Marines would lumber around very much encumbered by the heavy armor they wear. It's worth remembering that this whole process probably sounds heavily traumatic, but consider that it ideally happens when the young neophyte initiates between the ages of about 10 to 12 years old and should be then completed by age 18. Many are going to suffer critical or multiple organ failure during the process.
So it's a multi-stage, multi-year process. It's not all at once, okay, but still, oh my gosh. all of that stuff in one body. Oy. And they're still able to move around and kill things and use power armor. Wow.
Penalty, or arguably mercy, for this is usually euthanasia, although conversion to a servitor for the chapter is sometimes an option depending on chapters and their needs. Again, for those families who never see their sons again, in some cases it's probably for the best. All they need to know is he's serving the Imperium. Now, more recently, since the involvement of Belisarius' call of the Mechanicum, Primaris Marines are a new breed of superhuman Astartes. Under instruction from Roboute Guilliman, Primaris Astartes are only created from the gene seeds of loyalist Primarchs. They contain 3 additional organs, and their gene seed is considerably more genetically stable. Guilliman had instructed Call to develop these new organs with the goal of creating the Primaris, and their additional organs are the sinew coils. This enables the sinew of a Primaris Astartes to be durametallic, contracting with immense force, gifting them extreme strength and his body further resilience. This increased strength will literally enable them to crush the skulls of their enemies with bare hands. The magnifact, and this small lobe is inserted to the brain cortex. It secretes a hormone to increase the body's growth functions, with the goal of also intensifying further functions of the other implanted organs. Apparently, this organ is in fact half of the immortis gland, the god-maker gland of the Primarchs. For undisclosed reasons, Call was only able to discover the right half of this gland, not the full gland itself. The left half had been fully eradicated from Imperial records by either the Emperor himself or others unknown. And third, the Belisarian furnace. This organ lies dormant and connects to both a Marine's hearts. In times of immense physical stresses, it expels chemicals simulating combat stimulants, increasing the regrowth of tissue, bone and muscle. This is a short-term use organ and requires time to recharge after using. Now, if this incredibly harrowing physical conversion is successful, the neophyte or initiate will have completed the arguably most challenging part of his transformation. However, during these changes, they will still be undergoing some of the most challenging training and assessment regimes humanity had ever known.
It's not over. It's not over. After all of these years, after everything that you've gone through, still, you're not an Astartes yet. It's not over.
Psychological and physical conditioning, subconscious therapy and endless live battle training sessions. Their senses and mental abilities far exceed ordinary humans by the end of this process. Their mental toughness is beyond measure, and an Astartes will essentially ignore pain and environmental conditions. An Astartes will assault enemies who, to simply look upon, would make an ordinary human suffer a complete mental break. Many, through endless conditioning, will develop photographic memories. Much of this round-the-clock therapy will also neutralize any latent character flaws and create stable, highly single-minded warriors. This endless mental and physical indoctrination will also teach and reinforce high respect for authority and to expertly carry out orders. With that said, it's important to remember that Space Marines are not mindless drones or clones. They are individuals, and while always following the rule of command, if a situation warrants it, they are entirely capable of disobeying orders if they believe it to be ultimately necessary. The consequences for this, though, could be, and usually are, potentially highly severe. At the end of this process, the few successful young children who were pitted against one another and survived the ordeals to reach this point will be welcomed as successful young initiates, becoming full Space Marine battle brothers, Imperial Astartes, the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Astartes' aging, though, does seem somewhat random, with some living even as long as 10,000 years. But given the fractured and strange nature of time in the 41st millennium, it can be really hard to put accurate expectancies on this, and many Marines who are not killed may reach at least half a century in age.
Okay, I guess that answers my question about, the process of creating an Astartes. It seems like it takes years. But here Luetin says that, an Astartes soldier can live for at least 10,000 years or even more. So yeah, okay. Wow.
It's no exaggeration to state that on successfully becoming an Astartes, these men would be far from what you would recognise as human. Their extended lives and nearly unbreakable bodies are truly no prize. Their lives from this point on are spent in the sole act of defending humanity and the Imperium of Man. Accepting that their lives will be lost in battle at some point in the future, probably in horrific circumstances, they'll never see anyone they had ever known in their lives again. Families, friends will die far before they even begin to think of such things. Space Marines are the protectors. Humanity in the 41st millennium stands on a precipice. We've known many horrors, disasters, and catastrophes, the ending of many worlds, but the next millennia will be the most critical. Threats surround humanity, some still difficult to gauge just how severe and if we can resist them. Our hope is in the Astartes, and the Imperium of Man, and the Emperor. With the Primarch rulebook Guilliman returned, there is a glimmer of hope in the darkness.
The process of making a Space Marine, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. It's a journey. I mean, you'll be taken when you're around the age of 10, and probably around the age of 19 or 20, you'll be complete. Maybe, you know. And I'm just wondering, all of these people who were taken or recruited into the process of becoming a Space Marine, all those people, I know Luetin said that it's like a great honor, you know, to be selected as a possible aspirant for the Space Marine program, but honestly, it's insane. It's really insane. But you know, the entire universe of the Warhammer 40K is insane. And I guess, like he said, you have to be conditioned, you have to train yourself to be ready to face all the horrors and the nightmares and the utter destruction and gore of this universe. You have to be mentally still, like you have to be a rock that can't be shattered. Your body has to be no longer flesh but metal. It has to be this strong regenerative body that can withstand anything and everything that any planet, that any xeno species can throw at you, you know. And yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. And to think that at the height of the Imperium, there used to be hundreds of thousands of Space Marines. They created them like in a mass production facility, and ultimately that led to the downfall of the Imperium, embroiled in its own civil wars with Horus and his Primarchs that supported him, and the Primarchs who were loyal to the Emperor, you know, having their own tens of thousands of Space Marines fighting amongst each other. And also in that calamity, the gene seed itself became degraded and corrupted, and it just lost its effectiveness, you know, as a link within the chain to make a perfect Space Marine. So yeah, this is amazing. This is amazing. And the Thunder Warriors, now I know what happened to them. I knew about the Thunder Warriors. I knew them as one of the Emperor's first creations. I just wondered where they were, because I knew the Custodians were there with him since the very beginning. But I just never heard about the Thunder Warriors after the Emperor left to go and conquer the galaxy. So the Thunder Warriors were expendable. They were used until the very end, until the Emperor decided that, no, you know what, I'm done with you guys. I'm going to I'm going to just finish you guys off, and I'll bring in a new space force, a space marine force that is far more mentally stable than you guys. Maybe not as strong as the Thunder Warriors, but mentally stable, and that's very important as well. But yeah, wow, Space Marines. I think I have a bit more respect for them. Those who have survived this program and those who have become Astartes Space Marines. I think I have a bit more respect for them, because, you know, usually I'm with the common man on the street. I'm with the Imperial Guard. I'm with the Adeptus Sororitas, and I love my VIP protection squad, the Custodians, and the Sisters of Silence. So I like those guys, but I've never really seen the Space Marines as a faction that I particularly enjoy, you know. But after watching this, I have a newfound of respect for them. And yeah, this was great. Luetin09, thank you very much for this video. Guys, I guess that's it. If you like the video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next time with another video for the Warhammer 40K. Okay, bye bye.